Hello again. I'm back with another clock, and I've been looking for something different, something new that I haven't worked on before, and I came across this one. It's a Lux calendar clock. I have not heard of the Lux company before, and although I've worked on a few calendar clocks, those only had the day and the date. This one, however, has the day, the month, and the date. I got it on eBay. It was advertised as a non-working clock. I haven't plugged it in yet, and it does have a few issues. The first one that I've discovered is, I believe this is the set knob to dial the hands, and no matter whether I push it in or pull it out, it's not functioning. And this is the knob to change the day and the date, and when I turn it, you can see both the day and the date change. But I've realized that depending on the month, you may have a day and you want to have a different date, and turning the knob the opposite way, it just unscrews. So I don't know how you're supposed to make the date go the other way if you needed to. And lastly, there's a lever on the bottom here, and that's what changes the month. So the first thing I want to do is try to get an idea if the motor is okay in here. I'll check the continuity with my ohm meter. Make sure the wiring is intact. Just touch the leads to the plug and we'll see if numbers are flashing here. Well, that's a good sign. Now, when I say I hadn't heard of the Lux clock company before, I tried to do some research on it, and what I came up with is that it's the Lux Clock Manufacturing Company. It's out of Waterbury, Connecticut, and it was founded in 1914, and it was bought out by the Robert Shaw Controls Company, which makes thermostats and timers, in 1961. Now, I do not know how old this clock is, but I'm guessing it's from the 1960s. What I want to do first, figure out how to open this up. And what I'm seeing here, there's 3 nuts and 4 screws. And if I had to assume from others that I've seen like this, if I take these out, I think the whole clock will come out attached to this plate. So let's try to do that first. I'll undo these 4 screws. I'll do that on my own, and then we'll continue. Okay, they're out. Let's see if I can remove this. Well, actually, these knobs are in the way. This one, let me unscrew it, see if that helps. Okay. Well, it looks like I'm going to have to undo these nuts after all. And maybe it'll angle out and I can slip out this from the side of the case. Okay, let's take a look at this here. Oh, that's pretty interesting. Oh, see, now when I turn this back, okay, look at that. I'll try to show it. It's almost like little teeth joining this together. And when I turn it towards me, the day and the date change. But when I go back, I can turn the numbers the other way. The problem is, with this knob being threaded, turning it backwards unscrews it, almost like a design flaw. It would be better if this was a friction grip knob. I'll have to see what I can do to get it tight enough to make this turn either way. That's one. The other issue is, why does the set knob not function? Let's try to take this out of here, and this won't come out. But this hopefully is either threaded or a friction grip. And let me see if I can figure a way to remove that. What I think I can do, if I grab hold of the stem with a vice grip, I can either unscrew or pull this off. It looks like this could also be threaded. Now, I get the rest of it out of here. Okay, we have the glass. Put that aside and put the case aside. Okay, what I'm going to do next, let's find out. The wiring looks intact enough I can plug it in, and let's see if it runs. Undo the wire here. Plug it in, turn it on, and nothing's happening. All right, let me take a closer look at this and I'll try to figure out what I'm going to do next. What I'm not sure of yet is whether the problem is with the motor or if there's a gear that's frozen or jammed in here preventing anything from turning. So first thing, I want to remove the hands. Okay, one. Try the minute hand. It's a little bit big. And just so I don't damage the dial, put a little piece of cardboard underneath the hand here. Now that's moving pretty easily. Not bad. Now the dial is still stuck on here. I would have assumed it would have fallen off, but in any event, let's remove the motor. And oh, this wire came out of here. But I don't think that had anything to do with why it wasn't running. But there's two screws here and here. Let me undo those, and that should get the motor off. Come on. Okay, let's take a closer look at the motor here. I'm going to reattach this wire here. And just for the fun of it, I'm going to check for continuity again. Whoop. Let me get the plug up here. Okay, numbers is flashing, so the wiring's intact. So that has to be a reason why it's not running. unusual that it seems to have two output gears. And I really can't turn either of them. Let me see if I can figure out a way how this opens up. So give me some time to look at that. While I was trying to figure out what to do with the motor, I took a look at the set knob stem to try to figure out why the hands aren't turning. And when I pressed it in, I'll try to show it, and turn it, I see gears rotating. So now I'm thinking, I don't know why, I'm thinking that might be sufficient for the hands to move. So let me put on the hour hand. Turn this again. And now it's working. So I really don't know why it wasn't when everything was together. And I hope that won't be an issue when I go to reassemble everything, assuming I get this working. But in any event, and at some point I'll probably undo this plate here. I see 3 nuts to access the gears on the inside. I do like to clean and lubricate everything. But let me work some more figuring out what I'm going to do with the motor. Okay, I've done a couple of things. One is I disconnected the motor from here. And the other is I got in touch with members of the NAWCC, the National Association of Watch and Clock Collectors. I posted some photos, they have a forum, of this clock and the motor, and asked if anyone was familiar with it and how to open it up to get it working. And I heard back from someone who said that these have a tendency to freeze up, the oil gets thick and congealed on the inside, and that if you're able to flush out the old oil and relubricate it, that should get the motor working. Which, and I don't know why that didn't occur to me with this one, because I've done that several times on a lot of other clocks, mainly Hammonds and Telecrons, either removing the plug in the Hammond to drain out old oil or drilling a small hole in the side of a Telecron. So my first thought was, where would I drill a hole in this one, because you don't want to damage the gears inside. But then I spotted there's a small hole right over here, and that's going to give me access to the gears in here, because when I place an instrument inside here, I'm brushing up against the gears in here, so I know that that'll allow me to get something in there to clean them out. The other question is, there are wires coming out of this end. I don't know how tight this is sealed. If I fill this up, and what I use to clean them is I'll fill it up with liquid wrench, let it sit for about 12 hours, and then drain it out. Fill it up again with 3-in-1 oil, let that sit for 12 hours and drain it, and finally fill it with just a little bit of a synthetic clock oil. But because of the wires here, I don't know how much of any of that might be leaking out of here. So what I'm going to do, I have a small plastic cup. I'm going to position it in here. I have my liquid wrench somewhere over here. Here we go. And I'm going to fill up the motor with it. As I said, let it sit. I'm going to go through all those steps. And when I come back, it should be thoroughly cleaned out, hopefully, and relubricated. And then I'll be ready to hook it back up, and we'll see if it runs. So let me get to work on all that. Okay, as promised, I've cleaned out all the old oil and relubricated it. Some leaked out into the container, but not that much, so that wasn't too bad. What I want to do next is reconnect this to the power cord and see if it actually is going to run. Let's move all of this. Okay. There's one. And two. All right. Let me plug it in. and turn it on. And look at that, it's running. I'll try to show you. But only one of the gears is turning. I really don't know if that's how it's supposed to be. But something's working properly, and it's pretty quiet too, so I think what I'm going to do, before I even look to take this apart, I'll reseat the motor here, and let's see if it's actually working. Let me do that on my own, and then I'll continue. I'll just reseat the motor first. Okay, I'm just going to secure it with the 2 screws now, and then I'll continue. It's back on. What I'm going to do is reposition the second hand, and I'll plug it in and turn it on, and it's running. How about that? So what I want to do next, I'll take the motor off, remove this plate. I want to access the gears. The other thing that I haven't figured out yet is I don't know what this does. So hopefully I'll find out as we go along. But let me get the motor removed next. It's off, and I've also gone ahead and loosened the 3 nuts holding this plate down. Let's see what happens when I lift up the plate. Okay, that looks pretty simple. Let me take a couple of photos of this, and then I'll start to remove the gears, see how everything goes together. It's a pretty simple setup. One here, this one, and this. And I think this one too. Yep. And one thing I've noticed is that I still can't remove the dial. And it seems that when they made this clock, the center spindle on this plate is actually riveted or crimped over the front of the dial. So this can't be removed at all. Other thing I'm noticing, and let me put it back together so I can show. I think I figured out what this lever does. When I rotate the set knob, it causes everything to start turning, and it's easier to do it by hand, but as I rotate this, this lever starts to move up and then down. And what I think this does is this connects up against this sort of a little gear, and I think it moves up over it and then pops back down, and that's what changes the day and the date. Anyway, what I want to do next is remove all of these, clean them up, lubricate them, and then reposition them, and then I'll be ready to reassemble it. Everything's been cleaned. The plate, these gears, the area on this plate where the gears are going to fit. What I want to do now is to lubricate everything with some synthetic clock oil and then put it back together. And the way I do that, I put some oil in a little well. And I use oil pins. And what I would do first is This one fits in here. I'll put some oil in the center. And around the edge of it. Next, this one, again, some oil down the center. And this is really less than a drop. You use very little. And I'll also put some on the stem where it sits. Next, this one, same thing. Oil down the center of it. And I'll place some oil along this stem. As well as right on top on the pivot. What I have to do next, seat this plate. It'll fit like this. I just have to tease the pivot into the plate and then secure it with the 3 nuts. I'll do that on my own, and then I'll continue. Everything's back together. Seems to be properly positioned when I turn the set stem. Everything's moving. One thing I'm not happy with is how these wire nuts fit. They're much too loose for my liking, so I'm going to replace both of them with my blue ones. I find these make a much tighter connection. Once that's been done, I'll position the motor and secure it with a couple of screws, and then I'll be ready to reattach the calendar portion. So let me get to that point on my own, and then I'll continue. Everything's back together. I'm ready to position the calendar portion on top. I have to be careful to line this up so that it's sitting right on this gear over here. And that could take me a couple of minutes to get just right. So let me work on that on my own. Once it's back together, then I'll continue. I've got everything back together. What I've also done was I seated the minute hand and the hour hand. And I did that first, the second hand, to make sure that it's still running. So let me plug it in and turn it on. And it's working. The reason the hour hand is on is I want to advance it now to see if the day and the date are going to change. So let's give that a try. There's something starting to move here. Oop. This floats around, so it's hard to be accurate, but I think it moved today. And perhaps it'll function more accurately once everything's in the case and this is not moving all around. So let me work on getting this back into the case. I'll put on the minute hand, but actually before I do all that, I have to synchronize it. I'm going to, on my own, I'll dial around again. It looked to me, it started to change at around the 9. Wherever I feel that it's changing, that's where I have to place the hour hand at the 12, because you want it to start to change at midnight. So let me try to figure that out. I'll get the hands on, and then I'll be ready to put this back into the case. As you can see, I have the hands back on. The clock is running. I'm pretty sure that's the accurate time. I've also cleaned up the glass. Before placing this back into the case, first thing I have to do, remove the set knob. It's a threaded stem, so by turning the wrong way, it should come off on its own. I have to hold it a little bit. There we go. Now, first I have to seat the glass. This is going to go like that. Now let's see about positioning this. I'm thinking I have to put this end in first. You know what? let's unplug this. Okay, we're good there. I have to screw the set knob back on. And this clock is only meant to turn one way. So turning it the right way tightens it. If I go the wrong way, it loosens up. But you have to turn it a lot before it falls off, so it's less likely to lose this. And what I have realized with this end, if you recall, my concern was the fact that when you put in the knob to turn the date, and I think there's a reverse thread, that I didn't like the fact that I can turn it forwards, but if I try to turn it backwards a day, it would unscrew. But I've realized if I pull this out a little bit and hold it with a vice grip, now I can tighten this enough now I can turn it backwards and forwards. So the last thing to do, put the 4 screws back in here, see if I can hang it up somewhere, and give it a go. Let it run long enough to see that the dates are changing, and once I'm confident it's doing that, I'll give you a final look at it. Okay, I'm happy to say the clock is working. It's keeping good time, and the day and the date have been changing. It's functioning as advertised. I also realized I didn't have to hang it up on a wall in order to test it out. So here we have the Lux wall calendar clock. I believe it's from the 1960s. I'm also happy that I came up with something very different to work on, and hopefully I can find some other clocks that are also different from what you've seen in the past. I do hope you enjoyed the video. Definitely let me know what you think of this one. And that pretty much wraps things up. Bye for now.